Hello and welcome to today's session. I hope you're all doing amazingly well from whichever part of the world you are watching. It's an absolutely gorgeous day out there here in Madrid. Beautiful sunshine. It is cold, very cold, and the days are getting very short. But in a city where you have sunshine nearly 300 days of the year, you really can't complain. And today is one of those days I'm thinking, wow, I absolutely love this city. And on this happy note, today I would like to talk about what exactly do consultants do? Now, this is a question I've had being posed to me quite a bit these last few months, particularly once I've started to launch the Wellness Consultant Blueprint. So, my new program that helps wellness leaders transition into consulting. So, they've reached this stage in their life where they've outgrown day to day operations and they want to step into their next level of their career. And the question is, what exactly do I do? What is different from the role I'm doing today? And I also get that question from my boutique hotel owner clients who want to integrate wellness into their offering. Some of them have full blown wellness facilities, others do not. And the valid question that does come up is, Sonal, if I already have a consultant on board, do I really need to have someone to lead day to day operations? Do I need that wellness manager or that wellness director? And if I do, what are they going to do different from what you do? And these are all very valid questions. And sometimes, when you get into the consulting hat, you don't stop to think from probably the customer, the client's point of view, and also the wellness leader's point of view. So, what is different? Is there difference? And if so, what is it? And does it matter? So, is there difference? Yes, there's definitely a difference. And when I was preparing for today's session, I went and kind of distilled it down. Now, this is oversimplifying, but I've kind of distilled it down to your consultant. So the consultant who comes on board is going to direct you on the why you're creating a certain wellness concept and what exactly you need to create. And your wellness director or your wellness manager or the person looking after day to day operations, their job is on the how. So they focus on how they're going to execute that why and what the consultant has indicated. Now, you can't have one role without the other. So if a consultant comes on board and they're creating that overarching wellness concept, that why you should implement this particular concept and what exactly you need to implement. The idea is not worth much if it cannot be implemented successfully. So you need the what and why, the big picture strategy, what's happening in the industry. But you also need someone to execute it and someone who's in the field, someone who knows, who has contact with your clients, with your team members, with the local culture, and they're absorbing and living your hotel day to day. So you can't have one without the other. And giving your wellness manager or your wellness leader, the person who looks after the how and the execution, just them doing and executing won't suffice either. The reason is because you end up falling into it's kind of like a hamster in a hamster wheel. You just do, but you're not really progressing. And the how does need to be backed by a what and a why. Now, the question is, can one person do both? I'm sure many people would say yes. My answer would always be no. And here's why. I remember when I started in consulting, my first client 18 years ago, And I had a wonderful lady, so mother and daughter team, who sold me heavily. So deeply grateful. They got me one of my first clients. And this is a spa opening in a boutique property here in Spain. And I had just finished my stint in the Middle East for a very good brand. And I had been the pre opening spa director, and I'd already opened the facility, a very large facility. So I had pre openings experience, that also for a very large facility. And I had already opened it and seen success within the first few months of it opening. And I thought that when I had to go and pitch that I would help them open this bar, create the concept, I did both the what and the why without even truly realizing I was giving that kind of focus. Now, obviously, 2 decades down the line, I have far more experience under my belt. And the poor Sonal, who started 18 years ago, good as she was in an operational role, I was still learning the ropes when it came to wellness. And I ultimately became that glorified spa director. I moved up to the north of Spain and I helped them set up the spa and open it. So I took on the role of the pre opening director. And I found that as soon as I got into the weeds of that day to day, I suddenly lost perspective of the what and why. And clearly, back then, I was not even remotely aware of it, and nor were the owners of the property. They were just delighted to have someone help them open it, do it to a very good professional level, and they were over the moon. But now we fast forward 2 decades down the road, and I still have very good contact with them. I'm also consulting with them again. What I realized now with this, 20-year older version of myself, that I helped them open that facility very successfully. But in getting into the pool with them, I completely detached from the what and why, the strategy. I didn't give them the tools to strategically navigate the wellness offering. So, fast forward 20 years later, nearly, and revolutions happening within the wellness facility, it almost feels that they're starting from zero when it comes to strategy. It's like even if we had the wellness concept created on paper back then, we hadn't really looped in any innovation in the concept. And I take that as a good learning experience because had I stayed as someone who just created the concept, developed the strategy, and helped then train someone to come on board, to understand that wellness concept, and to then execute it, to make it their own, and then to identify if something doesn't work in that concept, how can we iterate? Because here's the reality, and this is one thing I have learned. You're never going to get the concept right out of the park. There is always going to be something you need to iterate. Hence, in my essence model, inspired by the lean startup methodology of creating that minimum viable product. So in this case, creating that minimum viable concept, testing it in the market, seeing what works, getting real-time data feedback, implementing that, then testing and trying again, learning from the market. If you're the person who's doing the what, why, and the how, it's very difficult to be objective. Now, on that rant, let me go into tell you what exactly a consultant does and what it looks like in real life compared to what a wellness director or wellness leader would do. Now, I have talked about the three exit strategies available. So, the three paths a consultant can take. Now, I'm not saying these are the only paths, but I have kind of whittled them down to three paths and they work. The first path is the internal consultant path. So you decide to become the internal consultant of a company, a hotel chain, a brand, and you are working with them as their essentially their advisor. And we have seen many successful wellness figures in our industry adopt those roles. And they tend to be long term roles. So they're more than a couple of years, the 3 to 5 years, or even more years. And what this person does is advise on how the wellness brand is going to evolve, what kind of openings or how should the wellness offerings be in each of the new properties opening, for example. And they take on the advisory role. So they are strategizing on the overall arching concept, the why. Why are we creating this wellness concept? Why does it fit within your brand? And also what the individual elements need to be. So the why and the what, that strategy, essentially. And then you will find that in each of the properties or each of the wellness facilities, you have someone managing the day to day operations, someone looking after the how, someone taking the what and the why, and they're executing it. And the wellness concept, the same overarching global wellness concept, looks very different in one location compared to another. So, for example, if I had a wellness concept here in Madrid, it'll look very different to the one in Seville, or it'll look very different to the one in Barcelona. They'll look very different concepts, even if we are within the same country. And who personalizes this wellness concept? Who adapts it to the local reality and the local clientele and your local team is the head of day to day operations. And someone sitting in a head office or in a location that is not in the day to day of that particular property or facility, they simply do not have enough data to do the how to. So that is why it's important to understand that when you're doing the what and why, you also need someone to look after the who, the how. And that is what works when it comes to an internal consultant. The second route we have is a project based consultant. Now, I would say that this consultant is probably the most operations led. So they do get very hands on. So they do get involved in the how, but with a caveat. The project based consultant comes in for a specific task. They have to finish it within a specific time frame and they leave after that is done. So that could look like I will be your pre-opening spa director or your spa pre-opening spa consultant, or I will cover your maternity leave, for example, or I will come into your wellness facility, troubleshoot and help you turn your wellness operation around. Or I'll help guide you and your team through the refurbishment of your wellness facility. These are just examples. Now, even if the wellness consultant does get involved in the day to day operations or is more hands on than a traditional consultant, they're still implementing their work with a very defined strategy. Why they're going to be doing what they're doing, what exactly they're going to do it. And because they have a very clear end date after a specific result has been delivered, they have to pass the how, their knowledge on how to keep executing the concept to someone else. So even if they get involved in the how to a certain extent, they don't just up and leave. They have to leave the facility with someone, the day to day operations with someone after they've delivered the result. And the last type of consultant, the strategic consultant or the specialist consultant, is someone I find who has already had previous consulting experience in some shape, way, or form, because that is one of the biggest jumps a consultant or any wellness leader can make to get into consulting, because it takes time to create a niche of your own, and it takes even more time to create your name within a niche. So while you definitely do experience exponential growth, if you manage to stay in your valley of despair and river of misery for long enough and work through it, you definitely see that exponential growth. But you need to build that awareness. You need to get those clients. And those clients tend to be fewer and far fetched. And these roles are definitely more based on the what and the why, and someone else executes on them. So if you're wondering, so you're a wellness leader and you're like, Sonal, I want to become a consultant. What exactly do I need to do? If you're a wellness leader, even if you're a global leader of your wellness operations, all of us have, had this very strong operational role. I remember when I was the regional director of spa for for a very huge region, I also had a property based role. So I was very involved in the how, making sure that the spa I was in, the property I was in, was performing, beating budget. My team was being trained. My spa manager knew what she was doing. That was very hands on. Then I did have that strategy work involved in helping new concepts be launched in certain locations, help creating them, help guiding architects and design teams on how a particular wellness offering should be done, and also advising owners of other properties whether they should be keeping their wellness facility in house or outsourcing it, again, depending on the location. So you have the best of both worlds. You also do get involved in the how, and you're also very involved in the what and why. And a consultant will focus predominantly on the what and why. You're going to give them that overarching concept, and you're going to tell them what exactly they need to do so that the local team or the team in house can adapt that what and why into how they're going to execute it into the day to day operations. And when you indicate why they're creating such a wellness concept, why such a concept has been created, and what exactly they need to do, they're better equipped to tweak what isn't working when they understand, this is why we created this wellness offering. This is the goal. This is what I need to do. But here's the reality. It really doesn't work in my operation unless I change or tweak one or two things to make this truly workable. So that is the difference between what a consultant does and what your director of wellness does. So be you an internal consultant. So you're working internally with the firm. Though that role is not too different from a global head of operations or regional head of wellness, for example. What you're dropping in that role is the execution. And you're letting the internal teams, wherever the location is, implement the what and why, the strategy you've created. And as a project based consultant, even if you get hands on, so you're literally going on site, you're flying, for example, to the Maldives, you're on site for 8 months, you're helping them open it, you're getting all the team trained, you're creating the menus, you're creating the concept, you're making sure you have all the FF&E, OS&D, all the things. So that very highly hands on and operational role. Even if you do that, you will need to pass the baton on to a number two, who will be someone who's in-house and will eventually take over from you, however temporary your role is. And lastly, when it comes to the strategic or specialist consultant role, that is definitely where what you are doing is guiding your client. You're trying to understand what exactly they want to achieve. They want your specialist knowledge. You guide them in the specialist knowledge. You tell them why you're going to be developing a certain wellness concept. You tell them what exactly they need to do. But you also give them the tools in order to successfully implement and execute on that offering. And if they encounter a problem or something doesn't quite work out as planned, they can go back to the why and the what and then edit what needs to be edited or tweaked instead of left there high and dry, not understanding what exactly they need to do or why something isn't working. Sometimes it's a small little tweak that needs to be added, a small little training hack, for example. So I hope that has helped you. Just clarify what a consultant does. Now, in the beginning, I did tell you that there are a few buts. Can you, the wellness consultant, do the role of the wellness manager, or the wellness manager also do the role of the wellness consultant? And that but generally, or that caveat there, tends to come when you have a very, very small wellness operation and your wellness profit and loss can't sustain the salary of a full blown wellness manager, probably because, they would get bored in the role because they wouldn't have enough growth opportunities. They wouldn't have enough movement happening in the wellness facility for them to actually grow with the company. In that case, your wellness consultant could assist with day-to-day operations. That said, I have never ever been a fan of that option. And there is a podcast episode I did take out where, no, you don't always need, the title was, no, you don't always need a wellness, a fully qualified wellness director to manage your day-to-day operations, particularly if you have a very small operation. It doesn't make sense for the person who's managing, and also for you as a boutique hotel owner. Your profit and loss can't sustain that salary. But now, just seeing how the wellness industry is growing, how rapidly it's evolving, having someone look after your day-to-day operations is key, no matter how small your operation is. Now, if your profit and loss can't realistically sustain the salary of a qualified wellness director, I would recommend having some form of head of day-to-day operations that can help manage team, team conflicts or team problems, rosters, client problems, also what's working in the wellness area, what isn't working, what are they noticing, just making sure that the wellness area is running smoothly. And that can't be the head of rooms division or head of housekeeping or your hotel manager. They have enough work to do as it is, particularly when the property is very small, because you tend to wear several hats at the same time. Have that person look after day-to-day operations, someone who is in the wellness business. Wellness is what they do. They're in that department. But supplement the part that probably the strategic role that a consultant would bring when things numbers aren't quite looking right, or you're not getting the right positioning, or customers aren't happy about certain things, and the head of day to day operations might not know how to troubleshoot in that circumstance, that is when I strongly recommend you invest in both that wellness consultant giving that ad hoc advice, or they could even be part of your board where they're just advising you on how you can move your wellness facilities ahead. And that can be on a quarterly basis, also, even an annual basis. But you still need someone who's going to manage the day to day operations, even if it doesn't make sense to your wellness profit and loss. And the reason I recommend that is that today you can no longer have a mediocre wellness offering, and you can no longer subcontract or lease out that headache of managing that area, because customers that come to your hotel guests, if they see a disconnect between what your team in the hotel offers, between the third party operator who is managing the wellness facilities, they will not forgive you, because having a good wellness offering is like, you have to have a good breakfast. If you don't have a good breakfast, then, you know, you're never ever going to have a place where people want to come back to a hotel. You know, that's key. The same, you have to have a solid wellness offering. This is where we have come to when it comes to wellness within hospitality. So there is a role for both wellness consultants and wellness leaders, and they both do very distinct jobs. One, the wellness consultant, looks after the why behind the wellness concept and what exactly needs to be implemented. And the person on the ground is responsible for the how to implement this overarching strategy. And you need both in order to be successful. So I hope you found that useful. And on that note, I wish you all a beautiful day ahead. Take care now.